Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Gig. I'm your host, Mike Redman. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to one of my very favorite people. Composer, inventor, educator, Keith Lay is without a doubt a calming force in the music industry. When I'm with Keith, my blood pressure goes down, and when I walk away after seeing him, I feel smarter. You will too. So as always, let's jump right in. Well, hi Keith, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning, Michael. It's a beautiful morning here in Florida.
Yeah, probably 94.
Yeah, I didn't say it was comfortable, but it is beautiful.
Oh, there you go. Hey, I wanted to start this out. There was something I wanted to say here, and it was like, I think of you as one of the most thoughtful, joyful, talented individuals I've met along my journey. So I just want to put that out there at the start. And you asked me why we were even doing this, and my thought was because you are that person, and I like to spread your joy. So that's why we're here today. And we'll move along because I know that most of the people that listen to this, they want to hear something that's going to help them. So I shut up a lot. I've learned to do that. By about the maybe 30th podcast, I ask questions and then kind of shut my trap. So I wanted to start with this because it's kind of how I met you too, with Full Sail University. You were you can correct me, I'll probably get the title wrong, but the production chair at Full Sail for 9 years or so. And so would you talk about what your role was there, what you did?
Well, like in a lot of kind of corporate situations, you feel like a team member and you do what you need to do. So you wear a lot of hats. And Full Sail's leadership, one of its strengths is that they give you room to help. It helps everything. So the titles are important, like all organizations that are, have a chain of command, because you do need one when you have 2,000 employees and 18,000 students. So my role there, before I retired a couple years back, was that I was a chair, and there are more than one chair in a department. And my duties had varied, but mostly they were managing a group of teachers. We call them course directors. Those are people who kind of like are the professors. And so I had a branch that was dealing with the technology at first. And mostly it was that sort of thing. It was it wasn't teaching music theory, that side of things. And it wasn't teaching some of the basic audio. It was more like final projects, film scoring, things that I do too. So it fit pretty well.
That's
the day. I guess the daily thing was you show up. I have my own courses that I teach, and then I have my folks, and it had to do with scheduling people, make sure that we were filling all the classrooms and that everyone was happy with their schedules. We had lab staff and we needed to share them, and so and then curriculum writing was up to I'd originally began the curriculum on that program, music production, back in 2009, and I had a role in its evolving, but you always give people that care about it, give them first dibs at writing it and changing it. You get them started, you give them ideas if they're not sure, and then it's brainstorming, and that's the best part about that school is that we weren't stuck to a text, and we weren't stuck to some crusty old book or a set of books or deans or whatever that said, no, it's got to be this way. It was like, well, what do we want to do? Okay, let's teach. And that really puts a fire under people who like to serve others. because it's like, what can I do for these young people?
Oh, that's cool. Keith, along with Full Sail, you somehow found the time to pursue a lot of pretty esoteric kind of endeavors. I'd like to talk to you, in the short version today about a couple of them. And I'd like to start with deep listening.
Yes.
What is it?
Deep listening is a composer's practice. And when I say practice, it is a practice of, let me just put it in a bag. It's spiritual in a general sense. It's psychological, mental, emotional in the being sense. And it was created by Pauline Oliveros, a well-known composer for deep listening, but also for electronic music. And electronic music has this really wonderful thing. In the old days, with electronic, when you were dealing with buchlas and moogs and stuff like that, the analog stuff, you had to know what you were looking for and then shape it. It's like starting with a big piece of granite, and you find the the sculpture in it, and you just have to remove the stone around. It's the same idea. And so what it did for people like her and me, because I did that too, is that you really start to hear things in a different way. And so what she found in her world of classical music was that a lot of musicians don't really hear. They passionately create gorgeousness, right? And things that fit, or whatever the emotion needs to be. But there was this gulf, this lack of them really learning how to listen to the other person that they're playing with. I mean, not that's just a tune, but mostly in music that is improvisational. And she found that it was really healthy for her and healthy for others to put down, maybe not put down their instrument, but put away the music and start just listening to what was happening. And when we do deep listening, it is not just with the ears, it's also you listen to your emotions. You listen to your body in general. You listen to your thoughts. You listen to your imagination. And all those things work together. All those aspects of who we are as people are brought forward in these beautiful things called sonic meditations, which are text-based interactions that create music as kind of a side effect, but not really, because we're all listening to each other. But you've learned to listen to nature, to the wind, to the shape of a tree, to all the ways that you feel to create. And it's designed into the sonic meditation text on how you're supposed to interact with other people and how many. And all.
The other one, let's talk train horns.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Tell our listeners what you do with them. I mean, I call it an exercise in invention, music, physics, and a little bit of crazy.
I just had kind of the pinnacle concert on the 15th of this month in June in 2024. And I'm really glad to say it works.
Oh, cool. All righty. There you go. It's kind of amazing to see. I'll have to say that.
I'm working on I'm getting the video footage together now. So it's not so much that I like the sound of train horns. It is not the reason I chose them. I chose them because they're the loudest instrument you can have.
There you go.
They produce 140 decibels at 1 meter each of them. And this last one I used 6 at a time. So it's probably the loudest instrument in the world, which is sort of against my normal idea of nature and quiet and meditation.
Yeah, I'll say.
But at the other side, it's like this whole joyful celebration of sound and place. And because as you move your place, you can meditate on space and the fact of being, and the fact of being able to move to another place is kind of a mystery.
Can you explain a little bit how, when I was there one day when you were doing it down in downtown Orlando, and the horns were placed on different buildings, and you had different groups of musicians on different places and different buildings in this composition. Can you kind of paint the picture for us for what it's like to walk up on something like this?
Well, the whole thing is based on the time it takes for sound across distance, and that's why the train horns are an important factor, because they're loud enough that they can be pretty far away, and far away sound cool to me the further away they get. It's unfortunate though if you're really close to them, but that's why they're in buildings, so no one's going to get their ears hurt. But in the case that you were talking about, those were Fusion Fest fanfares for this wonderful annual festival that we have in downtown here in Orlando. But I was using it what I call as an organ at that point, where I was simply using the train horns as this huge sound that fills the sky, but it wasn't really distance music. The only distance music aspect was that I had to compute how much time it would take at that temperature for it to reach the stage and the audience.
Yeah. Right.
So usually, let's say it was 600 milliseconds, something like that. So I would use the technology to push the train horns ahead in time, 600 milliseconds, and then I gave the conductor, I built metronomes that would be, so he knows where the beat is, so that's 600 milliseconds. So I had some coming from one building, and then there was a 300 millisecond-ish from another building, and they would combine. And
it's fascinating to hear. It's wonderful to hear.
It is really interesting because it does fill the sky. It's like, well, that's coming from all these places, and they were big giant chords that really helped lift the music, and I had a choir and African drums. It's all that stuff. Where
I felt like I was experiencing Benjamin Franklin or something, trying to catch that lightning the first time, and it's because it's the infancy of where you're headed with all of this stuff,
The main idea is this. I think I can distill it. So I want to create music that has the same meter and beat as it takes time to travel, right? So I measure music in distance. So this last piece, a quarter note was 452 feet long at that, and I choose a tempo, right? So an eighth note, right, was in the 200s. A 16th note was in the hundreds, right? So 100 feet, that's the time it takes for that 16th note to move. So I have a center spot where, in this one, I put 3 bands, very spaced apart. It's all very geometric. And so the audience knew where to walk. In fact, I could send you
here's some coffee.
I should get some coffee. I ran out. But that let people on a Google map, and they could see their blue dot on the Google map. And then I had this piece of geometry, which happened to be sacred geometry, which is another subject altogether. So they could see where to walk in order to find these mathematically perfect places to walk. And when they arrived at that spot, all the rhythms lined up metrically.
That's
away, it drifts away into chaos, and then they walk to the next one. They had 10 points that they could walk to.
Yeah, isn't that? That's amazing. That's where your mind starts blowing my mind. where the heck do you see us going in the music industry with AI? And,
what a great question.
And that there's a lot of well-deserved fear now because it's moving so fast. But there's also, I always looked at it as there's also opportunity. But right now the fear level is getting pretty high. And on every Facebook feed I have, man, it's this young girl singing with her new voice. It's automatic songs being composed that sound pretty good. And then I was reading also where production music companies are going to be the first that start using them because it's so easy to produce, 100 tracks a day and mix them. So what's your thought on all this stuff?
For people who aren't very creative and are people who are really good at giving people what they want, I know that's a weird way to say it. Yeah, they're super trouble, man.
Yeah.
Especially since the last, I would say, 7-8 years, the explosion of streaming, and people created this library business where you just have a credit card and you can go find the piece you want and license it. It's so easy, which is super important to why it blew up. One of the reasons we created music production was because, it's like I'm saying, look, there is a 300% job increase for composers.
Wow.
Because of this music world. And that was in 2009. And the labor industry even realized it, right? The labor documents from the government. So that was one of the reasons we started when we did. So that is, so someone says, hey, I want a James Brown-ish funk groove without James, but I need it with horns, and I need it for, if you can, put in this little edge for this kind of emotion, whatever. And then you tag it really well, so it has all the right things in it. You put it up there and people buy it. Well, AI is going to do that now.
Yeah.
And it'll probably do a better job because you can tell it how many seconds you want it to be, and it'll just be perfect. And a human being can't compete with that. I mean, maybe the micro groove that's in a James Brown, if these guys were good enough that they found that micro pocket, which is, if you're talking about James Brown drummers, and, that is a special, cool thing.
Yeah.
That they, so AI may not get all that, but most listeners wouldn't care.
I was going to say, most producers won't even know that didn't happen.
That's right. They won't know, and they'll be happy. And so, yes. But for me, I've never really, in my more recent years, I used to make a living doing that stuff too.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So I can't really speak from the seat of a young person who's in the middle of it now. But I can only speak from me. And in the last, 25 years, I just followed my heart and curiosity. That's what led me into pieces, into what I do, whether it's an orchestral piece or whether it's some kooky thing that I'm trying. Because I love life and I'm curious about things, and I write music to share an idea. Yeah. And so I'm no longer in that business. So maybe
good point. Yeah.
So for me, if you're really creative, I think you're going to be fine. Have you heard the term prompt engineer yet?
Prompt engineer? No.
Well, I don't know if it'll stick, but I heard it. I think it's a good one. So there's a new job category called prompt engineer. It's people who know how to handle and what to feed an AI efficiently to get the results. So maybe there's going to be a prompt engineer aspect to music. It's the same idea that if you're using ChatGPT, for example, if you give it a whole bunch of prompts, like some people will maybe have 100 prompts about the way you want the language to be, and from what perspective and who's this for and all these aspects. it's a pretty amazing, and it's not like the average output that people get. It's really good.
I have one last question for you, Keith.
Yeah.
You've been around doing this for a long, long time, and we'll be doing it again, but what's the best general advice you could give somebody entering the music today that might help them just, avoid a couple roadblocks?
This is probably going to sound too vague to be that useful. Follow your heart. And what I mean by that, I look back when I could have and maybe should have listened to my little inner voice and headed to LA with the Sinclair.
Yeah.
And taken some jobs I knew were there. Would have led to fame and fortune.
Yeah.
And I instead chose another path. And I often, when I think about those paths, and I think we all have things, well, it's just life. You make decisions and like, I sacrificed this for this, and then we could have done.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
You need to just follow it. Sometimes I wouldn't because I didn't think I was good enough. Or I didn't think that, I would stay safe and I wouldn't jump out. And as an artist, you do need to jump out with both feet, really, if you want to make it. Is bad language a part of our this podcast, or you bleep it out?
It's the more's better, yeah.
Okay. Sam Rivers is a legendary, just a great, fantastic saxophonist. For many years, we were close friends. And I asked him, well, Sam, so how did you make it in New York all those years? I mean, it's like this fight all the time, And as a jazz musician, he says, you have to be a motherfucker. and I'm not a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And so I got that. I'm a little soft around the edges, so I'm not gonna be. And I think that has to do with following who you are, and for better or for worse, most people don't know who I am, and I think there's a better in that and a worse in that. But the better is that I'm still creative and curious and healthy and love what I do.